Welcome to Bill and Tony's Excellent Adventure in Music. Here are your hosts, Bill Fraser and Tony Sartu.
Welcome to Bill and Tony's Excellent Adventure in Music. I'm Bill.
And I'm Tony.
And we usually explore our love for music, and we share some facts and some thoughts, and we talk about some of the best albums of all time. But this is our little setup for season 3, and we're doing some conversations and some concerts that we saw. So today we're going to talk about some festivals.
Yeah, so this year we went to 2 music festivals, and for both festivals, we went with our buddy Bert. And the first one we went to was called M3F in Phoenix, Arizona. And the big takeaway there, besides the fact that we're super old,
Dude, we were 30 years older than anybody there.
we were easily top 3% percentile age-wise. It was unbelievable. But nonetheless, we had a great time, and we were exposed to someone who is now one of my favorite artists. It's like literally, I can't stop listening to her, Maggie Rogers. So what a treat going to M3F was.
M3F was really eye-opening for me with Maggie. So I definitely heard some of her stuff and had started trying to listen ahead of going into that concert. But she really blew me away in Phoenix. And then, we just went to see her again at the Man in Philly, and she was phenomenal there. But she blew me away in Phoenix. It was a lot more rock than I expected it to be. You get the singer-songwriter, but you get like just a really good rock artist.
Absolutely.
And I didn't expect that. So she really just blew me away, and her vocals are just out of this world.
Vocals tremendous. Stage presence is absolutely amazing, and the quality of the songs is great. So she's already mixing her third album, so super excited about that coming out. When we saw her in Philly, she did a couple of the new songs as well, so I'm really looking forward to that. But we're not here to talk about Maggie. We're not here to talk about M3F, just kind of smuggle her in there. We're here to talk about Sear.Hear.Now, the I think maybe the 5th or 6th iteration over in Asbury Park.
So, Tone, Sear.Hear.Now was a 2-day festival. It was a Saturday and a Sunday. And I remember when me, you, Bert, and Will were talking about trying to get tickets for this, and it was on pre-sale. And, it was like 10 a.m. pre-sale, and we're going to go. And I tried to get to it. By the time I got to it, I didn't get tickets. You and Bert did get tickets. And as it turned out, Bert couldn't go both days. So I got to go on Sunday, which was a special treat for me. But you got to go both days. So I would love for you to share what Saturday was like, because I'm really curious as to kind of how it laid out Saturday and what the differences were from Saturday to Sunday.
Yeah, so obviously the layout itself, didn't change. But one of the
speakers changed.
Absolutely. So so since you mentioned the speakers, the sound was really good. And we met up with our buddy Eddie Jones and his family. And basically what we did was we parked right in the middle of the beach. So you were pretty far from both stages. So, you couldn't get really a great look at anybody, but the sound was still great, so you could hear the music good, and you could just get a nice, comfortable setup without being, trampled by people, all day. So that was a nice, comfortable setup. The disappointing thing was we had sprung for the GA Plus, which gave you some, supposedly some extra amenities. We were expecting some improved viewing areas and some better access to concessions and bathrooms. And those things were available, but only on one of the 3 stages. So that was a bit of a disappointment. So one of the challenges is, you're on the beach and you want to, go to the bathroom or get a drink or get something to eat. You're basically missing half of the set for whoever you're watching. So that was a bit of a disappointment, that it wasn't easier to navigate or faster to navigate. But thankfully, the sound was really good on Saturday, and the artists that I saw were the Killers, Greta Van Fleet, Sheryl Crow, and Royal Blood, and Tosh Sultana. So I'm not going to talk about all of them. Sheryl Crow is a longtime favorite of mine, and she did her big songs and stuff, and it was perfectly nice. Greta Van Fleet put on a good show. As people know, I'm not a Led Zeppelin fan, and they're a Led Zeppelin knockoff. So watching basically a Led Zeppelin copycat band is can be fun if that's your jam. It's not my jam, so whatever. It was great, I guess. Royal Blood sounded good. They were on when we walked in, and then finally the night ended with the Killers. And the Killers, they played most of the hits, and the hits are great and they sounded really good. So a lot of fun, perfect weather, and just some trouble getting in. It took like half an hour to get in from the South Gate. So the pro tip for next time is take the North Gate entrance. Supposedly there's not a lot of foot traffic coming that way. But all in all,
and don't spring for the GA plus, right?
So. Oh, and don't spring for the GA plus, not worth it. So that was my experience on Saturday. What was your take on Sunday?
So Sunday, we got a little bit of a later start because you were at the all day Saturday. I was at the Eagles and Steely Dan on Saturday night. So I don't think either one of us felt like rushing to the beach on Sunday. So we got a little bit of a later start. I think we got there, I don't know, 3-ish in the afternoon, 3:30-ish in the afternoon, something like that. And then we walked over. So by the time we actually got to the entrance, I think it was probably like 4, a little after 4, something like that.
I think we were in the venue a little after 4.
Okay. So if we were in the venue a little bit after 4, then we got there earlier than that, because we were waiting in that line for at least 45 minutes, at least. So that's, for me, pet peeve. Like, they just did not handle a mass of people very well. It wasn't that it was unorganized or whatnot, because I didn't feel like it was unorganized. I actually thought it looked fairly organized. It just didn't move well, and I'm not sure why, because it had people checking bags. It had places where you could go if you didn't have a bag. It had the swipe for the bracelet. I mean, in theory it should have been relatively quick, but at no point did it start moving. I mean, we literally were standing there for 45 minutes with the line not moving at all. And then it started to trickle, and so it moved like sand through an hourglass for 45 minutes. It was really slow.
Yeah, it was really slow. And shame on us, because I mentioned that maybe we should walk around to the North Gate. And we're just like, by the time we walk around to the North Gate, we should have walked around to the North Gate.
Yeah. So line took forever. So then we get in, and I was equally underwhelmed with GA plus. The little area was nice, but the fact that it was only by the third stage was really not a selling point. So I mean, the fact that really the only thing you got out of GA plus was a separate area for toilets and some concessions around the third stage is not a draw point. I mean, it's if the artists that you want to see are on the third stage, get GA plus.
Yeah, but you don't know that when you're buying the GA plus.
Yeah, exactly. So for that, I don't think the price delta would have been worth it based upon what I remember the regular GA and GA plus price difference was. I think it was almost double.
Yeah.
So the lineup Sunday, by the time we got there, we got some food and got situated. We headed over to the main stage, and
as we were walking in, the Beach Boys were playing.
Yeah, we walked over in probably the middle of the Beach Boys set, right?
Yeah.
And the first thing I noticed when we got there, I think you said Eddie and family were in almost the same spot that you guys were the day prior.
Yeah.
Sound was terrible. So you could barely hear the Beach Boys on stage, like barely hear them. And I mean, I don't know that I needed to hear them any louder than I did, but it was hard to, you're there to hear music and you can barely hear the music. And like, that was frustrating. It was a nice day. It was comfortable, kind of just hanging out lazily when the Beach Boys were on, but sound was terrible. And I was kind of underwhelmed with the number of speakers that they had set up.
So I remember writing off the Beach Boys sound at first because that was the first act that we saw, to them just being old, because I was there the day before, the sound was great.
Agreed. I mean, I was ready to put it in that bucket as well. I'm like, oh, maybe they just don't want the volume up that loud. But then it leads into Weezer, and I've seen Weezer play live before, and Weezer's loud and awesome, and the speakers were just not consistent. So we moved up to hear Weezer, and we listened to maybe the first 5 songs closer to the stage. And even closer to the stage, the speakers were going up, and they were vacillating in volume. It wasn't consistent. So it was like, oh my goodness, is this going to be what the whole day is like? And it really was for Beach Boys and for Weezer. I mean, you got basically inconsistent volume. If you were closer up, you could hear Weezer well enough, but it didn't feel like just a great concert sound.
You mentioned Weezer, so why don't you shout out some of our old Manalapan friends that we got to hang out with for a few minutes?
When we walked up, we actually got to chat for a few minutes with Joanne, Michelle, Andrea, and Francesca.
Yeah, so it was really nice to see some old familiar faces. And thanks for letting us hang out with you guys for a little bit up during the Weezer show. And then finally we end up with, so then we also had a gap, right? Because I think Tegan and Sarah were supposed to play on the other stage.
Which was a bummer. I think one of them got sick or both of them got sick, which is a bummer. They would have been pretty cool to hear. So there was a gap there.
Yeah, I was definitely looking forward to seeing them as well. So, and then we close out the night with the Foo Fighters.
We did get the Breeders.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, my bad. Yeah, we got the Breeders.
They actually sounded, that one stage
that other
had
stage
decent volume. Yeah, that one stage had decent volume. So the Breeders sounded really good. They were fun. And then we get the Foos. So for me, Sunday was all about seeing the Foo Fighters. I've wanted to see them live for the longest time. They've been one of my favorite bands for a really long time. I think I talked about it when we did the Foo Fighter podcast. I remember being a Nirvana fan and wanting Dave Grohl to be successful in his new band, and then hearing him on the Stern show doing Everlong and My Hero acoustic, when I was listening, living in Long Island and driving to work, catching them actually live on the Stern show here doing that, I became a fan instantly, and I've been a huge fan ever since, effectively. And I really wanted to see them. Obviously, tragic circumstances last year with the death of Taylor Hawkins and the cancellation of their tour, I was excited to be able to actually go see them. So it was a whole lot of fun. I was really worried that we were going to get terrible volume based upon how the Beach Boys and Weezer played out. And we moved up a bit to try to get closer to the speakers, but they must have done something, because by the time, I think it was like 3 or 4 songs in, it stabilized. Like it was loud, but it was still going up and down a little bit, like 1 or 2 songs in. And by like 3 or 4 songs in, I felt like it was just steady volume. So I felt like once we got into like the swing of the Foos, it was pretty solid. The one thing that was interesting was they came out a half hour early. So there was a threat of weather, and they were supposed to come on at 9. They came out at 8:30. And they played for 2.5 hours, which was awesome. Like, you don't, 2 hours and 15 minutes or whatever it was, right? You don't usually get that at the festival. You usually get like an hour and a half set. So it was really cool to get to see an almost full Foo Fighters set at a festival.
Yeah, they absolutely gave us way more than we bargained for. It was great. So the sound did improve a couple of songs in. I know in the newspaper, I saw in the newspaper. In the newspaper. Who am I, Brian? I saw some news stories, about the massive complaints. But I'm going to give credit to our friend Aaron, who was lodging complaints for
real time
in real time for a few hours. So even though I know there were a lot of people doing it, I think Aaron was the one that got them to fix it. So thank you, Aaron, for fixing the sound for the Foo Fighters.
And they were as great live as I expected them to be. I mean, Dave Grohl is dynamic and awesome. The band was tight. Everything I expected, I got. The vocals are something, that are, it's just, he's such a good screamer. And he actually says that during the show, like, he tries to get the crowd to scream with him. And he's like, it takes work to be able to scream like this. And it's true. Like he is a really powerful, like, screamer vocal, and it's fun. Like they played everything I wanted to hear mostly, and just really, really enjoyed the set.
Yeah, so that was my second time seeing them, and similar experiences. They're really such a tight band live, and so much energy and great songs live. So it's just really a fun show to see anytime you can see them. So full marks for the Foos.
And Josh Freese was a great addition as the drummer. I mean, just an absolute perfect plug-in. I mean, obviously it's hard to fill Taylor Hawkins' shoes, and any band that Dave Grohl's in, it's hard to be the drummer in necessarily. But Josh Freese is an awesome drummer in his own right. He's been a studio drummer forever. I was trying to remember when Tony and I were chatting at the start of the show. I was trying to remember, and I knew he was in a couple of bands like as a drummer on albums, and I couldn't remember. I remember Devo, and I couldn't remember the other, Nine Inch Nails also, which was awesome. So it was definitely something where he's got a lot of studio experience. He's an excellent drummer, and he fit in really, really nicely.
Wow, I didn't know that he was in Nine Inch Nails. So those great drum lines on Nine Inch Nails songs are him, like across the board.
At least some of the studio albums. Yeah, he recorded on.
Interesting. Yeah. Cool. All right. So any any final thoughts? Would you go again to Sear.Hear.Now?
so I'm gonna answer that in two parts. I will 1000% go see the Foo Fighters again. In fact, they're on pre-sale for Citi Field, and I am going to buy tickets for 2024. So I've got my little timer set. I'm going to buy Citi Field. I'm going to go to the baseball stadium and watch a concert again, which I don't love baseball stadiums for concerts, and especially my last experience at Citi Field for a concert for Lady Gaga was not great, but I'm going to go because I want to see the Foo Fighters, and that's the only thing they're playing in the area.
Really? That's it?
Two Citi Field shows.
That's garbage.
So the one I want to go to has got the Pretenders and Wolfgang Van Halen opening. So I definitely want to go to see it. But yeah, Citi Field. Yeah. So 100% I will go see the Foo Fighters again. Will I go to Sear.Hear.Now again? It depends on who's headlining. So I would say that standing on the beach in the sand is harder than I expected it to be. To stand there and dance or whatever for like hours. It's really hard on your feet. And especially if you're not sitting, and when you're packed in together because you want to see Weezer or see the Foo Fighters or whatever, there's not a great opportunity to sit and see the stage or whatever. So you've got to be like standing on the sand is harder than I thought it was going to be. So for me, it's really going to depend on who the headlining artists are. If there's somebody really amazing that I want to go see, then I probably would go.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm not a lock to go next year or whatever, but it's dependent on the lineup. So to be determined.
Yeah, that's the best way to say it. To be determined. I would make it dependent upon the lineup. So.
Oh, I'll just add too that the other thing that just makes it dicey is we had perfect weather. The weather couldn't have been better for both days that I went to. So the unknown is the weather, because it rains.
It was supposed to pour. It was like, they had Hurricane Lee going on at the time. Mm-hmm. So it was like, it was supposed to pour on the Sunday night.
And it rained that night, just a little later than.
And we got 5 minutes of rain on the beach. Mm-hmm. And then it didn't rain until we were driving home.
Exactly. So so it's a tricky proposition, but definitely enjoyed it, and we'll see about next year. Bill, how can folks get a hold of us if they want to contact us?
So we've got email, bill@bntexcellent.com, tony@bntexcellent.com. We've got social media, Instagram, Bill and Tony Pod, Twitter or X, Bill and Tony Pod, and Facebook, BNT Excellent. Or you could send us a pigeon.
All right, so that just about does it for us today, and we'll be back at you with another quick bite concert review in the next few days.
All right, thanks everybody.